creative writing professor Leif Erikson, just checking in to talk to you today about creative nonfiction. Now, creative nonfiction is what we call a genre of writing, and that word, in case you've ever wondered, is related to a lot of other words you know, such as generic, general, genes, genitals, gender, genealogy, and a bunch more. And it has that meaning of beginnings or startings. And that's where we get the word genre, which literally means kind of writing. Different kinds of writing are different genres of writing. Now, we cover three genres primarily in this class: creative nonfiction, magic realism, and stage plays. So let's talk about creative nonfiction that you're working on right now. So first of all, this is kind of a confusing term to people sometimes. Let's break it down. Now, fiction means something made up, invented. You have an idea for a character, a story, even though they might be influenced by things that actually happened or real people. Nevertheless, you've made it up and it's a made up story. That's fiction. Now, when you put non in front of a word, what does that do? It makes it not, right? You know that one. So nonfiction means it's not fiction. So nonfiction is stuff that is true, stuff that actually happened. Now, here's where it gets confusing to people, though. You put the word creative in front of creative nonfiction, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. If you're creating something, to create means to invent, right? To make up. So how can it be nonfiction if it is creative? Well, the funny thing about that is technically, anytime you write, you are creating, even formal writing or truthful writing, as we're talking about. You are creating because you're having to create sentences and paragraphs, and how do you put the words in order for the best effect and to get across what you want to say. That all takes creativity. But creative nonfiction is different from just that kind of creativity. But what creative nonfiction is talking about, at least as we're covering it in this class, is writing stories based on things that are true. And not just based on things that are true, but the story is intended to be a reflection of what actually happened. It's not made up, it's not invented, it's not creative from nothing, basically. It is actually something that happened, that is true, and you are using a short story form to communicate that truth. Now, whether, you can really remember exactly what happened, because memory is weird, and the nature of truth itself, those are all important questions and discussions, but for another time. For now, just know that a creative nonfiction story is a story that attempts to write about true events and real people, but in the style and technique of fiction, which we'll talk about later. Another type of nonfiction is called the essay. Now, an essay is a short piece of writing that focuses on a particular issue or a single topic and delves into that topic or issue closely. Now, essay writing is designed to inform or enlighten, or both. They usually have a theme or a focus. Like, for instance, somebody will write an essay about a flower. And it's just a flower, but they'll talk about what the flower means to them and maybe what it makes them think about life. Or they'll just talk about themselves. Or they'll write about, their experience living in different cities and that kind of thing. Those can be stories, but what we're talking about is when people write essays, they write it as a straightforward talking to you, explaining something to you. It's not so much a story. Now, I want you to know that essay writing is not what we're talking about doing in this class for the creative nonfiction piece. We're not writing essays here like you would in 101. Like in 101, the professor will often ask you to write like a personal essay. And you need to have some theme or overall point there, because if not, they'll be like, what's the point of this? This is supposed to be a formal essay. It just happens to be about yourself. Well, a lot of times people want to do that in this class for this assignment. So I want to discourage you from doing an essay. In fact, the assignment is not to do an essay, but rather a short story that is creative nonfiction, which means it is telling a true story, but in the style of a short story, like a fictional short story. We're not necessarily trying to have a theme or a moral. Rather, what I'm asking you to do in your creative nonfiction stories is to create art with your words. And you're like, oh, I can't do that. Well, you can try. And that's what I'm asking you to do, is to try to create art with your words. And let's explain what I mean by that. See, whereas the driving force in an essay is the theme or the overall point, the thing you're trying to get across to the reader, in a creative nonfiction story, the driving force behind that, instead of being to inform or enlighten, is to be creative, to have some effect on your reader with the way you say what you say, to make them feel something, to make them react, to respond, even if they're not sure why. Now, a short version of how to say this is in creative nonfiction story writing, it isn't so much what you say as how you say it. Like, just like a good movie isn't like if you went into a movie and you sat down and they just gave you a bullet list on the screen of everything the movie is about. There's a family, they have a conflict in the family, the brother runs away, the family comes closer as they try to find the brother, they find him, everyone's reunited. Then you leave the theater. Will you be angry? You'd be like, I paid money for that? Like, because you're looking to see art on the screen. Yeah, a person could get across the meaning of the movie in very few words or even visuals and get boom, 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 and go like it's like a factory. We go in, we get the meaning, we leave. But that's not what you go to a movie for. That's not why we watch TV. That's not why we experience art in a museum. We experience it to feel something, to be moved by something, to see something unfold rather than just be given a bunch of information. Think of the stories we've read in this section, 501 Minutes to Christ and An Ounce of Cure. Both of those stories could have been, the authors could have written out their entire meaning in a single sentence. Something like this. Because of some goofy boy, I got really drunk when I was a teenager and later thought about how silly it all was. That could be like a summary of An Ounce of Cure. So what if you open, the book you were reading and there's a story? That's it. That's the entire story. Anything that compelled you, that moved you, made you react, made you laugh, made you sad, made you happy, made you feel anything. Those stories had a lot of that stuff in them, which would not have been communicated just by getting across the information of the stories. So creative nonfiction asks you to do more than just get across the facts of what you're trying to say, which you could do in a bullet list. And why write a story? I know that's a challenge. It might scare some of you. I don't know how to be that kind of creative. Well, that's where I'll help you on your drafts. That's why the drafts are important. I give you individual feedback on the drafts. So on this piece of writing, this story you're going to attempt to write, the idea here is to make your reader feel impacted some way. Make them angry, make them happy, make them sad, make them laugh, make them care, make them not care. Now notice that I have deliberately challenged you here because I have given you a topic that is often given in 101 classes for you to write a personal essay about. I did that on purpose so we could get to this point and I could say to you, don't do that. Don't do the thing you usually do. This is to push you out of your comfort zone on purpose. Now, that is not to say that you should try to not have a theme or a meaning, of course. There's nothing wrong with themes or meanings or overall points, even in creative nonfiction short story writing. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, if that's where your brain takes you and your creativity takes you in some way, well, I don't want you to throw it away because he said no themes. It's not like, this is not a requirement like I'm going to punish you for it. I want to free you from the burden and the pressure of having to have those things. Just release yourself from that.